Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a beautiful day, and we are going to continue our review of stem changing verbs. They're beautiful, they're majestic, fabulous, and worth 2 weeks of our time. So hopefully you guys are refreshed on the process of conjugating stem changing verbs. But if you are not, this will hopefully serve as your refresher. So the important thing to know, in Spanish, all verbs have two parts. They have the infinitive ending, which is your AR, ER, or IR. And then the rest of the verb is classified as the stem. Now, an important thing to note about stem changing verbs is that not every verb in Spanish is a stem changing verb. In fact, it's kind of a rare thing. So, some common stem changing verbs are verbs like dormir, which means to sleep, or empezar, which is to start, servir, which is to serve, and jugar, which is to play. Now, let me tell you something crazy. It's like I did this on purpose. Each of these stem changing verbs that I listed as an example, they all have different stem changes. So in dormir, the O is going to change to a UE. Empezar, that second E in the stem changes to an IE. In servir, the E changes to an I. And in jugar, the U changes to a UE. So here are the steps of conjugating stem changing verbs. So step one is going to be identifying the subject. The reason we are going to do this first is because our subpoint is going to be to determine if it is in the boot or out of the boot. So if you remember from Spanish 1, or if you watched the video from last week, so in Spanish, we have our conjugation charts. And each of these boxes represents a conjugation that is specific to certain subjects. The whole purpose of drawing out these conjugation charts is to organize and identify which subjects correspond with which conjugations. And so last week I told you guys the boot is the yo form, the to form, él, ella, usted, ellos, ellas, and ustedes. So if you notice, the highlighted zones kind of look like a little boot, you know, like a cartoon boot. So if it is inside of the boot, it gets the stem change. And then remember, nosotros and vosotros never change. Because they are, you guessed it, outside of the boot. So second step is to insert stem change if necessary. And then step 3 is to conjugate the infinitive ending. So this is where most of you were getting a little bit confused, even though notably it is one of the simpler steps of conjugating stem changers. It was like you forgot that that was something we had to do. So let's look at the verb dormir. As I told you on the previous page, it is an O to UE stem change. And we'll go ahead, just because I love you all, we're going to draw the whole conjugation chart. So all of these inside of the boot are going to have the same stem. The O changes to a UE, and the rest stays the same. So the stem for all of these is dwerm. And then the stem outside is not going to change. It's going to remain an O. So now what we have to focus on is conjugating the IR endings. So we have to think back to Spanish 1, and our IR endings are O, S, E, imos, is, en. So duermo is I sleep. Duermes is you sleep. Duerme, he or she sleeps. Dormimos, we sleep. Dormís, y'all sleep in Spain. And duermen, they sleep or y'all sleep. So just to help you guys out, if you are taking notes right now, we are gonna hit pause on stem changing, and we're gonna review some conjugation basics. And the conjugation basics that we are gonna touch on our present tense. Ooh, look at me remembering how to spell. Present tense endings. So I'm going to put AR verbs and ER verbs. And then we'll do IR down here at the bottom. So if you remember in Spanish 1, when we're conjugating verbs into the present tense, the first thing we do is remove our infinitive ending, which is the AR, ER, or the IR. And once we have that removed, we're going to replace it with a new ending based on the subject of the sentence. Okay. So our AR endings, we have O, as, a, amos, ais, an. And so just to connect this with our stem changing verbs, these are the conjugations that will indeed have a stem change. Our ER endings, guess what? They're the same as this, but instead of an A, they have an E. O, S, E, hemos, eis, en. And if they're in these boxes, just when we're using stem changing verbs, we'll insert a stem change. Because remember, nosotros and vosotros, these two boxes, are outside of the boot, so they are never ever going to receive a stem change. And then last but not least, we have our IR verbs, which are very similar to ER, but slightly different. We have o, es, e, imos, is, en. Okay. We will do a couple of like basic conjugation examples. I'll even do them on a Post-it note so we can still see our endings over here. So I wanted to say, these things. Number 1, if I wanted to say I serve. Following the notes that we took earlier, we have to identify the subject, which is yo. And we have to determine, is that going to receive a stem change? So we know that yo is in this top left box. So yes, it is inside of the boot, so it will receive a stem change. And servir is an E to I stem change. So we have the stem changed. Now we have to conjugate the IR ending. So we look at our IR chart and find the yo ending. So yo sirvo is I serve. Mark and then dormir. So mark is the same as saying él or he, which is in the bottom left box. So yes, it would indeed get a stem change because it is in the boot. So I'd say mark, change our stem, and then we would have to look at our IR chart because dormir is an IR verb, and select the correct ending. Mark duerme. Mark sleeps. Excellent. And then we have nosotros and then empezar. So we have nosotros. Step one, is that inside of the boot or outside of the boot? So nosotros is in our top right box. Amos. That's outside of the boot, so it is not going to receive a stem change. So we don't change anything except our AR ending. We're going to replace that with amos. Nosotros empezamos. Okay. Those are the review notes on stem changing verbs. We've got some lovely Zooms planned for this week, and I would love to have you all attend. Talk to you later.